11. Welcome to the Stogie Geek Show, episode 111. This episode is sponsored by Mr. J's Havana Smoke Shop. Located in Rhode Island, they have an outstanding selection of premium handmade cigars. And by the Havana Cigar Club, located in Warwick, Rhode Island. It's a great place to enjoy a drink and a cigar. Stogie Geeks listeners can find a $5 off coupon on our website or by clicking the HCC logo. And by Debonair Cigars. Visit stogiegeeks.com/Debonair for our list of retailers who carry Debonair. Buy some and get a little more Debonair. And by Ocean State Cigars. Try the J Grotto series, including the J Grotto Silk, the J Grotto Reserva, and now just launched this past week, the J Grotto Anniversary. Visit them on the web at oceanstatecigars.com for a full list of retailers near you. Welcome to a blockbuster doubleheader edition of the Stogie Geek Show. I'm Will Cooper, manning the controls for Paul tonight. Up in the Rhode Island Center of Operations, we have our very own Mark Jr. Mark, what's going on?
What's going on, man?
Excellent.
I'm pretty excited to be here.
Great to have you, by the way.
Thanks.
What are you smoking tonight, Mark Jr.?
Smoking the Cro-Magnon Blockhead by Romacraft.
Excellent. I actually am still smoking one of our first guest cigars. It's the Nomad LE Esteli Lot 1386, and I'm going to be lighting up the Blockhead in a little bit.
That was an awesome cigar, man.
Yeah, it really is.
There's one retailer up here that carries your stuff, Fred, Cigar World in Cranston. And,
okay.
I smoked through what they had there, and the lot from Esteli was awesome.
Thank you.
Really good
Thank
cigar.
you.
Excellent. And we'll have Fred Rewey, the founder of Nomad Cigar Company. He'll join us for the first segment, and then we'll be joined by Skip Martin of Romacraft for our second segment. And also, just for Stogie Geeks listeners who are listening live tonight, I will be giving away a 5-pack of the returned blend of the El Rey de los Habanos by My Father Cigars. So you have to listen to the show. There'll be a question at the end. It's only for the live audience tonight, so a little incentive there. This segment, before we get into Fred's segment, this segment's sponsored by Havana Cigar Club in Warwick, Rhode Island. They have the Treehouse Tavern game dinner on October 8th at 6 p.m. They're running food at halftime for all the Patriots games, and they have Tuesday night high-low jack. And new to their humidor, as we covered last week, is the Elohio blend. Fred, welcome back to the Stogie Geeks tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So you actually have the when we started our series of guests, you were actually our first guest. So welcome back.
Wow. Well, a lot's happened since then. Episode 111, I think I heard. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think you were like episode 60 or 61. So it was a little over a year ago. And Nomads has had a great year in the past year. So why don't you catch us up on the last 10 to 12 months of what's going on with Nomad?
A lot, actually. At the show recently in July, I released another cigar called the C276. That was actually after spending 2 full months in Nicaragua. Kind of had something to, a lot more to learn. I think as I discovered, and a lot of listeners have kind of been along for the journey, it was, the more questions that I had answered and, prompted about 7 more questions. So I really wanted to have a stronger cigar, a fuller profile in the portfolio. And so I really just started with square one and really wanted to have a lot of complexity. So I went layer after layer after layer. And I want to say the more I'm doing now, I'm really enjoying the blending process. It's a real art. It's where I'm having the most fun. You're just, it's you and a whole lot of tobacco and creativity. And, leaned on a lot of colleagues of mine as I've learned down there, and I found everybody to be very receptive. And I ended up, putting out a cigar that I was very happy with. And everything in my portfolio has to be something I want to smoke, because if I ever got stuck with them, then I better, enjoy the cigars. So the C276 actually ended up with 5 different tobaccos in the filler, 2 Ligeros, both Condega and Esteli, and also Ometepe, which I'd always kind of liked but hadn't had the opportunity to play with in a blend. And it really rounded out that cigar very nicely. So I'm really, really happy with that. And that one really, between that and the Connecticut Fuerte, which was back in DR, it really rounded out the portfolio. So it used to be, over a year ago, probably about 16, 18 months ago, if, I had kind of one blend and it's kind of a take it or leave it. And, someone would walk up and go, well, I'm really looking for something medium. And I didn't have anything, and until last fall, and I really like full, and I didn't really have anything, so I wasn't succumbing to the pressure of filling the portfolio. But from a personal growth standpoint, I really wanted to blend the different phases and the different parts of the portfolio. So I kind of had a big sigh of relief this year at IPCPR, because when we got done setting up the booth and the blends, having all the boxes out, I kind of felt like, regardless of what type of smoker or your profile was, I had a cigar to offer. I had the classic Dominican cigar. I had last fall, I put out the S307, which is the box press Sumatra. Early in the year, I had the Connecticut Fuerte, which was the one that was just an absolute, nightmare to try and figure out, thinking a Connecticut would be easy, but not necessarily one that I would enjoy. So that one finally came together, and then the C276. So I really feel at this point that, all I ever wanted when I started was to learn and to grow. And every cigar that I do is different than the previous one, but also the amount of knowledge and the amount of learning that goes into it. The C276, there's no way I could have blended a year ago. I didn't have near the knowledge to do it. So it's nice to have a full portfolio now, I think, to offer. Excellent.
Let's start with the Connecticut Fuerte. You made a decision, I guess, that was, and let me back up. What's unique about your company, and you're in the House of Emilio family, but you're unique in that you are split between the Dominican Republic and Nicaragua.
Yeah, I mean, my heart's really in both.
Yeah, so you made a decision. What was the decision in terms of why the Connecticut out of the DR? What kind of led you to kind of go that route?
That's a great question. It was probably a lot more familiar to me. And I really, really liked the factory I work with on the original classic line. So it seemed like the place to start for me. Obviously, I could have made it in Nicaragua, but I was kind of still sticking in the tones of the Connecticut that I really like. The tobacco that I really liked in the DR. And that just seemed to be, for my knowledge base, the logical place for me to start with the Connecticut. The struggle is that I wasn't smoking a lot of Connecticut's any longer, especially after spending so much time in Nicaragua. I really, and being a big fan of the Habano wrapper, I wasn't spending a lot of time on the Connecticut. So it seemed like it was a safe place. It's where I started, so it seemed like a good time to go back there. The struggle was trying to come up with a Connecticut that I liked. The idea behind it was to take a Connecticut and give it a little bit more flavor than normal for a Connecticut smoker that wasn't quite ready for the leap all the way to Nicaragua. And a lot of my portfolio has really mirrored my own growth. And the struggle was to give it a little more flavor. The audience I really ended up with, which is kind of mirroring what I was going through, was a lot of guys had really given up on Connecticut. It's not to say they weren't good. They were just saying they weren't getting enough flavor out of a Connecticut for what they really enjoyed on the other cigars they were having. So we actually played with some Nicaraguan Ligero in there, and it was a struggle. But once the blend was right, the audience I've really picked up were all the guys that gave up on Connecticut. That now this is kind of their breakfast cigar. They're having several cigars. They want to dial back, but they still want to have something with some flavor. Or like I said, with a cup of coffee or something. And actually the Connecticut will probably end up being the best seller, which really surprised me if it keeps on track to where it is. The C276 is cutting into it a little bit, and the S307 still is the best seller. But the Connecticut audience, it really took off much, much greater than I had ever hoped it would. And it seemed to resonate with a lot of people.
You made a comment, I guess, I know you made it publicly, when you were talking about the blending process for the Connecticut. You said you had to let the tobacco, and I'm going to paraphrase this, You got to let the tobacco do its thing.
Yeah, I've found that kind of not just on the Connecticut. I really found that on the 307. The 307 was one that when I went into Nicaragua, I'd already done the lot 1386, and I was trying to come up with something a little bit more full profile. And the 307 was intentionally, or at least initially, was supposed to be a fuller bodied cigar. And what I learned, and it sounded kind of weird in the process, is I learned that whatever tobaccos I'm playing with, my philosophy is to take those tobaccos and give them their best light. Whatever the blend ends up being, the blends end up being, and not really force it into something that it wasn't. So the 307, the Box Press Sumatra, I was constantly trying to bump up the Ligero, and I was trying to play with some other things. And what I realized, I was really happy with it as a medium cigar, but I was trying to chase a portfolio thing, and I realized, well, that was the wrong thing to do. So it sounds goofy, but I kind of just, my philosophy is to kind of let the tobacco talk, and what is it going to be, and what tobaccos will blend well with that to showcase them all as a whole, not any one individual component of it. And that has actually stuck with me into the Connecticut, definitely stuck with me into the C276. There were originally 4 fillers, and I was just trying to get yet another layer in there. And it was suggested to me to go over to Ometepe Island and check out the tobacco there. So I went there, and bringing the Ometepe into that blend helped, not only brought in Ometepe, which I really liked the flavor of, but it also showcased the rest of the blend, and it gave each tobacco its due. I know it sounds really goofy, but it's a neat way to blend, and it's a neat way to approach, to not try to force it to fill a portfolio, or not force the blend into something outside of where it kind of needs to be.
Yeah. Now, Ometepe, for folks who don't know, is an island in Lake Nicaragua. Did you actually go over to Ometepe?
I did. Matter of fact, when we went over there, it's a beautiful, beautiful island. And actually, that's where C276 gets its name. C is for Concepcion, which is the volcano on Ometepe. And 276 is the square kilometers of the island. So it definitely influenced and to me, finished out the blend very nicely. I went to the island, and I'd never been there, and I experienced howler monkeys, which I'd never heard before. Which if you ever have never heard howler monkeys, go on YouTube and imagine walking through a jungle in the middle of nowhere and hearing this screech that does not sound. It sounds like out of the movie Predator. It doesn't sound like it comes from a monkey. And when I checked into the hotel, and well, it's not even really a hotel. I mean, there's nothing fancy on the island, but there was some mosquito netting in my around the beds, and my wife had been with me, and she made the comment, she was it's kind of romantic with the mosquito netting, and the guy that showed me the room said, well, no, that's not for the mosquitoes. And I said, well, what's it for? And he says, well, it's for the tarantulas. So I'm like, oh. So I can tell you the first 2 nights I got absolutely no sleep, because I was really worried I was going to wake up at 2 a.m. and it was going to be a scene out of the Raiders of the Lost Ark or something, and have tarantulas all around the netting. So I did not get a lot of sleep the first couple nights, worried about that.
So just, Ometepe, do people live on Ometepe? It's an inhabited island?
It is, yeah.
There's like roads, you get there I guess you get there, there's a ferry that takes cars over there?
Yeah, it's a ferry. I mean, Lake Nicaragua is a huge, huge lake, and it's a big, beautiful island, and I highly recommend if people go down to Nicaragua, whether on one of the tours or something like that, usually the tours, they pick you up in Managua and drop you off in Managua, but if there's any way, and you can get out of Granada or take a bus down to the ferry out of Managua, but I highly recommend taking a day or two and going on that island and checking it out, because it is really, really impressive.
Excellent. So cutting back to the whole DR and Nicaragua, what are some of the differences you found working with the Dominican factories versus the Nicaraguan factories?
That's a good question. I mean, I have to take away the personalities a little bit. I mean, obviously everybody's different in every factory, whether I go to a couple in, Esteli, or I go to some in DR. To me, that even though the culture in Nicaragua has been around for a long time, I feel like in the Dominican Republic that there's more history there. There's definitely, to me, there's a lot smaller, boutique, guys making cigars and stuff there. I don't want to say that it's necessarily from its roots, because I don't want to discount Nicaragua necessarily, but it's definitely not as fancy. Certainly there's some very beautiful factories in DR, but It's almost like, in Rocky 2 or 3 and going back to the garage to do the workout. The factory I work with in Esteli, which is predominantly AJ Fernandez now, is a beautiful, beautiful factory and very state of the art. When I'm in the DR, it's much more rustic. Next door there's like a lady with all these chickens and stuff like that. So it just seems to be more back to the basics there a little bit. But there's advantages to both. The DR just, like I said, it's a little more rustic, and that just seemed the natural place to start. But, my heart really is in both countries for completely different reasons. And people always ask, well, which one do you like better? It's really hard to pick. The culture is very different. Obviously there's similarities because of the tobacco industry, but I really am divided in which one I like work with. And I'm really happy. My quest with Nomad was, both the name, which is made up of, various travel elements and everything else, was to go wherever I wanted to go to make this kind of cigar I wanted. And I just felt that for the Connecticut Fuerte, that was the place to go back to.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, speaking of Nicaragua, I know that earlier this year you took an extended trip down there. And I know you did some sightseeing, but as well as it was a serious work trip in terms of working down there. Tell us a little about that, because it sounded like from you talking earlier that that's where you really kind of increased your knowledge, so to speak.
Yeah, it was kind of if the IRS is listening, it was purely a business trip. But but I had been down there so many times since I started with the Lot 1386 that it was remiss in not experiencing the country. So we went to Leon and spent over a week in Leon. We spent a month in Granada. We went to San Juan del Sur. So I spent a lot more time in the country. I was there over the holidays. We went from like November 15th to January 15th. So I was there for Christmas in Granada and New Year's, and really just wanted to experience more of the culture. Every time I'd gone down there, it was land in Managua, go straight out to Esteli, which is about 2 hours away. And I really hadn't felt that I had experienced enough of the culture outside of Esteli. And I love Esteli a lot, but it's a whole country. So I really wanted to experience the rest of the country. And it's a beautiful, beautiful country. I could definitely see myself living down there part of the year. I really like, each city has something different to offer, both in history and both in the culture and the food and everything else. So it was definitely an experience that will not be limited to that one trip for sure.
Yeah, I know I talked to Jonathan Drew when he was starting out, and he said one thing he thought was key for his early growth was how he immersed himself into the country and took the time to learn the culture of that. Do you think that that's now, not just the tobacco elements, but some of that cultural stuff, is that going to go back into now some of the future projects you have?
It does. You can't help but think about it. It's so funny, and I've said this before, and it's certainly true even more so now after an extended trip, but I used to, for myself, I've been a cigar aficionado for over 12 years. So, long before I ever had a company, I've appreciated all the cigars, and I still smoke a lot of different cigars that I'm really happy with. Particularly when I'm not blending a new cigar, it's exciting for me when it finally gets put to bed that I can, go smoke some of the new stuff that I haven't had a chance. And, for me, I used to hear people talk about Jonathan and other people talk about the culture and the passion and all the other stuff like that. And I have to be honest, 10 years ago, I kind of would discount it as, well, okay, yeah, I get it. It's a marketing thing. You're trying to sell the culture of it and all the people and the passion. And after being down there, it's no BS. You really see the way these people live, and you see the heart and soul that goes into it. And both DR and Nicaragua. I know people, that are very high up in factories that are really out in the fields, and their passion. The tobacco plants are like kids to them. They're raising them, and they treat them as such, and the level of respect they have for their art, and no matter how small that component may be, in the whole entire process, they have respect for what they do, or they have. A sense of obligation to do their job in a way, the highest and best they can. And you just can't help but notice it when you're there, that goes well beyond, an event at a store or something like that.
Excellent. Yeah, outstanding. I mean, I've only been to Nicaragua. I've been to Nicaragua a few times. I haven't spent as much time as you, but I could definitely relate to that.
Well, I mean, I know Skip's the next one on the call later on this, and he can tell you more than I. I mean, he's down there most of the year, and I get it. Other than being able to get Florida Cana, in abundance, there's a whole lot of reasons to be there.
Absolutely, it's a beautiful place. So I'm going to jump back to the Connecticut Forte. And last week you had a new release in that line, a Lancero.
I
so
did.
What led to the Connecticut Forte being your first Lancero?
Honestly, it is absolutely perfect in the Lancero. I had played with Lanceros on two other occasions. One was the original classic line, and just couldn't get it right. And both at its inception when I started, and also in revisiting it, the Lancero did not work. The Lonsdale works very well in the classic line, but the Lancero did not. And as I've smoked more and more, particularly on the blending, I start to get into the smaller ring gauges and really, really appreciate how a blend can showcase in those sizes. And, you talk to any cigar manufacturer, and a lot of them, there's a sense of appreciation and a gleam in their eye when you start talking about a Lancero they have. And, we tweaked it slightly, just as you always do with the size. But from almost day one, the Lancero and the Connecticut Fuerte, I'm like, wow, this is really, really good. So I had it, I laid them down. I was kind of using them for event-only cigars, and then I kind of felt like, well, that just wasn't fair for me to keep them for myself. So I went ahead and released it, and I did last Thursday officially, and the response has been great. I mean, they've been selling really, really well right out of the gate. And I'm glad everybody kind of found in that particular size what I've known. And I really think that, we've seen, it's not a secret. I mean, we're seeing more and more Lanceros. And it's not really because necessarily I think the market is liking Lanceros, and a lot of guys don't. I think the reason Lanceros don't sell more is strictly a value issue. I think a guy looks at a Lancero that's going to cost the same as a 5 by 58 or something like that, and they're going, well, I can get twice as much tobacco for a quarter more or something. And I think for the people that are only smoking a couple cigars a week, or quite frankly, if you're smoking several cigars a week, I think you're remiss in passing up on, a 5 by 50 or a Lancero for the experience that you get out of that tobacco. I remember talking to Jose Blanco about it at Pro Cigar one year, and the struggle with it. And I mean, I'm just really, really... I look back on Lanceros from 10 years ago, even as a cigar smoker, I really wasn't smoking them. And I start to think of all the old blends that aren't around anymore that, boy, I really missed out on not having some of those Lanceros and how good they really are.
Yeah, I agree. Now, you made a kind of an interesting decision with that Lancero. I mean, a lot of manufacturers, they hear what you just, they say what you just said, and rather than kind of go out there and make a regular production one, they limit it. From what I understand, this is a regular production Lancero, correct?
It is, because I think the only reason they do the limit is, look, you're only going to sell so many Lanceros. Right. So if it's a distraction in the portfolio, or you're looking at factory constraints or something like that, then I think there are certainly issues of why you would do that. Look, people put out LEs for two reasons. Either one, it truly is a limited amount of tobacco, or two, they're just going for the nice little hit. They go, hey, we sold through, and they get the marketing splash out of it. The Connecticut Fuerte is a production cigar, so there's nothing in the Lancero that I can't just make that size all along, and I had been smoking it myself all along, even when the Connecticut Fuerte came out in the other sizes. So there's no reason, as long as people are buying the Lancero, or as long as the Connecticut Fuerte is a line, there's no reason not to make that one available in this case. Excellent.
Mark Jr., do you have any questions you want to ask at this time?
No, I've just been enjoying listening to it.
Excellent. I want to make sure I give you your feel free to interject anytime too as well.
Yeah, sure, man.
So you talked about limiteds, Fred, and we were just talking a little before the show, and I'm smoking the LES Esteli Latin Lot 1386. Boy, that's gonna be my tongue twister.
Me and my stupid numbers.
me and my Stogie Geeksies. So you kind of let the bad news out to me that this is done.
Yeah, it was from the very beginning. You know, it was a fact-finding trip to Nicaragua to learn about the tobacco. Stumbled on a small amount of Ligero that yielded about 400 boxes. Released 307 of them, I think, to the market. Some I kept for myself, events and friends, charity things like that. But unfortunately, and once it was out, by the way, I went back to Nicaragua trying to find more of that Ligero, but it was from a very small field. Very specific part, you know, is how it was handled, and it just could not be recreated. So it wouldn't have mattered. Matter of fact, it's probably good that I didn't know that cigar would be successful, because I would have driven me even more nuts, you know, realizing I couldn't make more. So it was a true LE from the very beginning, and I'm glad that it went over so well. And trust me, I wish I could have made more. You know, it laid down very nicely. I mean, it's over a year old now, and it smokes wonderfully.
Yep.
I only have about 7 boxes personally, if that. And you know, initially when I did it, I was hoarding, so I had 50 boxes for myself, and you know, and I let it go down to 40, and then I'm like, okay, I'm not getting rid of any more than 40. I'm keeping them personally. You know, then someone go, oh, come on, please. You know, so then all of a sudden, before I knew it, I had like less than 12 in the humidor, and I'm like, okay, that's it. Now no one's getting any. But I'm working on a blend now that I actually was working on 2 blends when I was in Nicaragua, and I have another blend that is not, it's not made up in any way, shape, or form as far as the tobacco that's in the Lot 1386, but it is reminiscent of it for me, because I did really enjoy that cigar. Like I said, even though it's a completely different blend, it kind of reminds me of that one a little bit. Now that may just me, so it'd be interesting if I actually put the cigar out at what people think of it, as far as comparing it to the 1386. But you know, there's a lot of people that never got to have it. The 307 boxes, they went out, and a lot of people unfortunately didn't get to try it. So I wish I could have had a bigger run of that one, just so more people got to enjoy it. But like I said, it was just me learning as it still is, and we'll see.
Now, it's kind of, I'd say, it's in a very early stage in terms of whether you're going to go do a run of these. Would this be another limited, or would it be something that would be regular production that you think?
No, this would be a regular production. This one does not have any tobacco constraints to it. There is one that is a potential limited, but it's super scarcity, and I really don't want to put out something that's quite that small. So I haven't really decided what to do with it, whether just to hang out with it personally, do an event thing out of it, or something like that. I don't really like limiteds from the standpoint of, you know, what do you do if you really love the cigar and then you can't get it? I mean, so it's kind of like walking the fence. I mean, on one hand, you want to put it out because if you've created something that you believe is different, unique, and although it's limited, you know, you don't want to pass up on it. You don't want to not do it. But on the other hand, you know, it ends up being really good, then people are disappointed. But I think you're better off putting it if you find something truly unique and truly limited. What I don't like about limiteds are people that put out limiteds and say, oh, you know, we only got this tobacco, and then lo and behold, a year later, they throw out the same cigar saying, oh, look, we found some more in the back room somewhere, or something like that. I think if you're going to put LE on it, you're really doing it for either there's a limited amount of the tobacco, or there's something, you know, it's a one-off unique size or something like that. You're just not going to recreate for a whole lot of production reasons.
Yeah, we were actually talking to Rafael Nodal from Aging Room Cigars a couple weeks ago, and he, you know, with the M356, which is one of his small batch, the run's at an end. But it was one leaf that was really the gating factor. So they've made a decision to kind of put another leaf in there. And rather than call it the M356, they're coming out and they're just saying, hey, it's an M356-1, acknowledging right away that, or actually two, they're calling it, double I. So they're acknowledging right there, hey, this is not the same blend, but it's kind of in the same wheelhouse right now.
Yeah, and that's what I've been playing with on the 1386 was to do, actually, it's funny, the same thing. I was looking at 1386.1. But, you know, for me, I mean, it's not enough of the same cigar. I don't want to throw out to the market that this is the Lot 1386 or similar when it's really not. I think if you have the ability to get very close, then you have a marketing decision to make of how you want to handle that cigar. And certainly that's a very viable option, particularly if you were really limited by one specific tobacco.
Exactly.
The 1386 for me, was limited by one tobacco, but it was such a huge component of the blend that I couldn't recreate starting with that cigar again.
Right. It's understood. No, and I think there's something to do. I applaud you for that move, by the way.
It's
I think
honest.
Well, thanks. I didn't know if it was right or wrong. I just did it.
No. I think a lot of cigar enthusiasts, as much as we probably are gonna miss this blend. It's probably in the end, it's better.
Honest. Yeah.
Well, I mean, man, it's so funny. I mean, as I do more and more blends, I mean, I look back at some of the blends, the early blends, and I'm like, man, I was just dumbass lucky. Because I mean, I knew nothing back then other than what I liked flavor wise, without knowing the details of where specific soil and fermentation and I mean all these other things that now I've learned. I'm like, now I look back on some of them and go, wow, I just got lucky.
No, I think you had something to it. I mean, so I think you knew. I've done a few blends myself. On a few trips, and I thought they were great when I smoked them, and then now I wouldn't give them to anyone. They're terrible. So
yeah.
The fact that these are holding over the test of time, you definitely are on the right path there.
Well, thank you.
Now the one thing, so the C276 is an Oscuro, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The one thing I would say, if I looked at your portfolio, the one thing I would think about is, have you ever thought about doing a Maduro?
I have. For the same reason that I did not have the C276 before now, in that I didn't have the ability to do that blend, I don't believe that I have the ability to blend a Maduro right now. I said that the other day, and somebody just thought, "Don't ever say that in public," but I just did. So what? I mean, it's a growing process for me. I'm learning. I don't smoke a lot of Maduros. In the last 12 years, it's not been my go-to stick. I mean, I've certainly smoked more than most, particularly as I did more and more blending. But, as I evolve as a blender, that could change, a couple years from now. I would say it's probably not any time in the next, where I am now in the blending of a Maduro, I'm still at least a year away of even getting my arms around it enough to create a Maduro that I like, that has the components that I want. So, look, I've said from day one, I'll tell you what I do right and I'll tell you what I do wrong. And I do not feel that I have the ability to blend a Maduro that I would be happy with right now. Now, another trip, a couple more trips and learning and listening to my colleagues and things like that, then maybe I'll hone in on it. But right now, the Maduros that I've played with have been just not anything special. And I try to make sure that, I'm not going to put out a cigar and I know people want a Maduro. I mean, I know a lot of people have asked me, when are you going to do a Maduro? When are you going to be a Maduro? And I think they have to wait for the same reason they had to wait on when I was going to do a Connecticut. When I feel that I've got my arms around it and I feel that it's a product that I can be proud of, and that I enjoy, that you will see me smoking. I know people that put out cigars that don't smoke personally, to fill a portfolio, and that's just not something I'm willing to do. So until I get smart enough and until I gain enough knowledge and until I wrap my arms around it, I just won't have a Maduro yet.
Well, that's an honest answer. No, I'm very appreciative on that.
Yeah, we'll delete that part out where I said that.
Just got to hit edit.
Okay, good. No, I mean, it's the truth. It's what it is. Like I said, C276, I could not have blended over a year ago. And the Maduro, I'm just not there. It's another area I'm focusing on. I have a lot to learn. Like I said, for every time I get an answer, I get 7 more questions. And I'll get there eventually. And I want to get there because it's like, it's like an artist that wants to do it, that's doing sculptures and wants to do this, but, has to learn how to do horses or whatever it may be. I'm just not there yet. And I'll get there because I want to get there personally, whether it's a cigar that I end up putting out or not. I want to learn how to do it. I want to take that passion into another type of blend. I just need to learn. I have more to learn on that area right now.
Good for you. So you've been, now you've gotten a few years in the industry, and there's a lot of changes happening in the industry right now.
Yeah.
And over the past few weeks, we've seen some acquisitions happen, namely let's hear in Toronto. Now I'm not going to ask you to specifically comment on those companies, but what are your thoughts right now of what we're seeing in terms of these acquisitions? Is this a trend? What do you think's driving it right now?
I think you have two things. I think you have one company that's obviously financially in a position to buy up. But I think what you're seeing right now is I think that you're seeing that the two things. One is that the boutiques have certainly grabbed a significant portion of the humidor. I haven't been quiet about it as far as saying, you look at some of the stuff in the FDA and it's clearly targeted to boutiques. There are languages in there that of things that really try to drive boutiques out of business for absolutely no reason other than that they hold a piece of the humidor. I think that you have some companies that are trying, it's kind of a land grab, and they're trying to grab part of that humidor in the best way possible. And I don't think what they're doing is wrong. I think it's a business decision to go, how can we get this audience? How can we get these people that are into the boutiques? How can we bring that boutique culture into a larger company? So I think there's some moves in that way. I think there's some moves in the way, if the FDA stuff does come down the way it's been proposed, and hopefully it doesn't, and I suspect there'll be something, and hopefully not to the degree of what's out there. I think there may be some companies that are preparing for that and going, well, if this does happen, how can we gain some of that? Because if it passed as it is, that there's a significant amount of boutiques that would be out of business. Which leaves a space in the humidor to be filled. The question is, who gets that space? And I don't think that space is going to be filled up just because someone has another offering. I think there needs to be a marketing and a philosophy behind that. And that philosophy, and I think that the big guys that are doing some of the buy-ups and stuff like that, they understand that, look, we've got to get somebody that embodies that boutique attitude and find a way to bring them into the fold and gain that audience and overall expand our portfolio, because just being a big company and adding more blends doesn't do it, because people are smoking boutiques for a whole lot of reasons that go beyond just a simple cigar offering.
That's a good point. That's a good way to look at that. Now, I know from talking to you, and you're based in Orlando, Florida, you've developed a friendship with Avo Vazian. How's he doing? And tell me a little about that friendship, how you kind of hooked up with him and what that friendship kind of means to you.
Avo's a great guy. He's 88 now. If I'm in the DR with him or something, we'll go down there. He is nonstop. I mean, he's one of the people that I, really looked at when I was looking at building the business from a role model standpoint. He's truly a wonderful ambassador. He's truly passionate about the industry, and he's truly passionate about everybody that smokes his cigars. And he definitely gives everybody the time of day, which is something I really respect. That's something else I see JD do a lot. Jonathan Drew at an event, you see lines just out the door, and Jonathan Drew gives everybody the due and talking to him and appreciates it. Avo's the same way. Avo's just rich in stories. I mean, Avo has led just an amazing life. He didn't start cigars till after 50 years old. And a lot of people aren't privy. We're trying to get Avo to do a book, but aren't privy to his life even before cigars. And just an amazing man, and just a wonderful person to sit around and we'll smoke cigars 2-3 days a week and just watch people walk by, and just an amazing person. One of those people that literally has just a wonderful old soul.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was at the Davidoff dinner this year, and Avo could not make IPCPR, so he wasn't at the Davidoff dinner. And he did a video message, and I tell you, he got a standing ovation, and everyone was absolutely focused on that video. They stopped what they were doing to listen to him, and the passion was absolutely still there, even though he couldn't travel this year. And it was a wonderful moment. I can tell you that right now.
It's interesting that Avo is an icon for being Avo first, and the cigars and everything else after, in my opinion. And watching him, it's just he's just one of those people you gravitate towards as a person, forgetting the cigars, forgetting the history, forgetting all the blends and all the price points and all the other stuff. He's just somebody that is charismatic that way, and just wonderful heart. I mean, just a wonderful heart, and speaks 10 zillion languages. I mean, anybody walks up to him and starts talking a language, he can talk to him, and it's amazing to watch. But I think it's because, there's no other agenda for Avo other than the appreciation of life. And in the case we're talking here, the appreciation of cigars. And that's the kind of people you want to meet and you want to talk to. And I think that's why you see that level of respect for Avo.
Yeah, the funniest thing was few years ago, I gave the Avo LE10 my cigar of the year, and I was with someone, a retailer, and with Avo, and the retailer took the phone out and said, "Hey, look, he gave you the cigar of the year." And Avo looks at me, and I'd heard he said this to people before, but I never believed it. He said, this was right before the 11 came out. He goes, "Wait till you try the limited edition 2011. It's even better."
Yeah, yeah.
And he was very passionate about that.
It's funny. I was at a small cigar bar, well outside Orlando, and Avo, just a couple guys, and they said, "Oh, we'd love to meet him." And I said, "Well, I'll ask him." And Avo wanted to go, and we got in the car and went out there. And I mean, it wasn't a big event. It wasn't this big fancy thing. I mean, we just came in and kind of crashed the place, and to see him light up like that is amazing, because when we left, he says, these are really the true cigar smokers, and there couldn't have been more than 12 people there, but that's where his heart is. It doesn't have to be 50,000 people. It doesn't have to be 500 people or 100 people. I mean, he just every individual smoker, and it's amazing to watch.
Excellent. Mark Jr., anything else before I go into the 5 questions?
No, fire away. I'm interested to hear the questions.
All right. So, Fred, since you were on last time, we've installed a new segment called 5 Questions with the Stogie Geek. You ready to play this?
I don't have a choice, but I'm a little nervous.
You could say no comment.
Oh, good. Okay. All right.
So this is the first time I'm doing. Paul, my partner, normally is the lead on this. So we'll see how this goes. This is the first time I'm doing this. 3 words to describe yourself.
Short attention span.
That's a good one. Well, 3 words, one concept. If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Wow, that's a good question. I'm gonna go with a ice pick made out of ice, because it'll melt and then there's no evidence.
Love that.
That sounds a little too well thought out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It is rather. I don't know. Maybe we should get off the air.
That's kind of creepy. Note to self: don't search ice picks.
Yeah, that's a good tweet for you, Fred.
You might end up on some NSA list.
Yeah.
That's got to be like an Alfred Hitchcock thing at some point. I'm sure I got it from someone.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
I'm surprised I turned out this normal.
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
I don't even know what that game is.
It's European.
I don't even know what that game is. I'm afraid to answer either of those for not knowing what it is.
Okay, we could say that's a. Oh, that's fine. If you were to pick both. 2 celebrities as parents, whom would they be?
Oh wow! Can they be dead?
Yeah.
2 celebrities. Mark Twain and let's see. Now, see, it's careful because you don't want an Oedipus complex here. So now I got to think of somebody that would make sense. Mark Twain and I'll say Glenn Close. She seems cool.
Nice. By the way, I never revealed mine before, but for the audience, I've been asked this a few times. It's Farrah Fawcett and Fabio.
Fabio.
That's just
cool, man.
That's a whole lot of clogged drains in the shower. That's yeah. See, but now the Farrah Fawcett thing, you're back to the Oedipus complex. That's kind of weird. You have to pick somebody like, I mean, yeah. Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, actually, you know what? I probably would have picked Judi Dench. That's somebody you'd be like, okay with. That's fine. She'd probably be cool.
Excellent. Fred, thank you so much for coming back on the Stogie Geeks.
I appreciate it. You guys are doing an awesome job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fred. I'll see you in Charlotte next week.
Okay. Look forward to it.
We're going to take a break, and then we're going to bring in Skip Martin of Romacraft.